Shall we begin?
Why would a good God allow suffering to exist? Does God really exist?
Let's begin now.
Why did God command the deaths of so many people in the Bible? Why does God remain so hidden?
Let's begin now.
Welcome to the Third Degree. I'm Sule Prince, and I'm here with Dr. Tony Costa. Dr. Costa, I could see it now. They're going to say, how does this Uncle Tom have this white devil speaking about the Nation of Islam? But one thing we know is that facts don't care about your feelings, and facts doesn't care about your color as well. The Nation of Islam is a black nationalistic movement. What do the Nation of Islam, the members, feel about the white race?
Well, they tell us exactly how the white race began. It was actually a scientific experiment gone awry by a black scientist by the name of Yakub, which is strange because Yakub is a Hebrew word for Jacob in the Bible. And in the earlier teachings of the Nation of Islam, they actually believed in many gods. They believed in 24 gods, council gods. So the 24 elders in the book of Revelation, for example, would have been seen as 24 black god/scientists. So Yakub became a renegade against Allah, the head god. And through a freak accident, he created the white race. And the white race began to afflict and enslave the black people, and they're responsible for all the ill and the problems and the wars that we have today. Included among them is the Jews. Louis Farrakhan, the present leader of the Nation of Islam, has said right out that the white people are nothing but a race of devils, of white devils. He's also said that the white man has not fully evolved yet. And so the idea here is that the white people were basically a scientific freak accident that occurred by this black scientist god by the name of Yakub. And especially pernicious among these white people are the so-called modern day Jews. Farrakhan has been known to be vehemently anti-Semitic. He blames the Jews for 9/11. He blames the Jews for practically the slave trade. He blames the Jews for every evil that has befallen humanity.
Yes.
So the idea then is that the white people are generally considered to be devils. And he believes that Allah gave the white race 6,000 years to dominate. That year ended, the 6,000 years ended in 1914, when this was the end of the domination of the white race. And that in the 1914 and following, he believed that the black community in America would wake up. They would be resurrected. And resurrection means mental resurrection. Okay. They don't believe in a physical resurrection. Okay. So the black man mentally resurrects by recognizing his real identity. So the era of the white man's rule ended in 1914. Now this is interesting because there's another cult called the Jehovah's Witnesses who also teach that in October of 1914, they believe that the rule of man has ended and that God's kingdom was inaugurated in 1914 when Jesus Christ returned invisibly and set up his headquarters in Brooklyn, New York at the Watchtower headquarters. Now, why is this interesting? It's interesting because the same claims are made that the Nation of Islam says that 1914 is a significant date. It's the end of the tyranny of the white man's rule, which obviously it wasn't, because we still had the Jim Crow laws, we still have the civil rights movement and the tension in that during the 60s and so forth. So
they were wrong.
They were wrong.
Okay.
They were dead wrong. And again, time is a false prophet's worst enemy.
Yeah.
And we know that from the Bible, Deuteronomy 18, verses 20 to 22, that if someone presumes to speak in the name of the Lord, and that thing has not happened, it's not something that God has spoken. And so the Nation of Islam in many respects does have the earmarks of a false prophet.
Yeah. So what does the Nation of Islam believe about Jesus, about God, and about the Bible?
They believe God was a black man, and his name was Wallace Fard. He came as Wallace Fard in 1930. Very interestingly enough, the Rastafarians also make a very similar claim, but they make that claim about Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian emperor, who they call Rastafari. And they also claim that he was God himself in the flesh, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And so you notice there's a pattern here with these black nationalist groups, the Nation of Islam, the Rastafarians, and as we're going to see in our next episode, we're going to see this with the black Hebrew Israelites as well. So they believe that God was black. They believe that all the prophets were black and that Jesus was black. The problem with that view is that anthropology has shown us that human beings are divided into three categories, what we call phenotypes. And so we have the Caucasoid, we have the Mongoloid, and we have the Negroid. And what distinguishes these features is the characteristics of the face of these people. So Caucasoids generally have thin lips, smaller noses, they have facial hair. Their hair tends to be straight, it could be wavy, curly. The Mongoloid have higher cheekbones, their eyes are more slanted, they have very little facial hair, maybe some on the above the upper lip, the mustache for instance. And they generally are brown-eyed and they have black hair. You don't really see a lot of Asian people that are blonde unless they dye their hair. Yeah. And then you have Negroid, and the Negroid is the flat nose, thicker lips, kinky hair, and a dark skin. So if you were to ask yourself, well, which of these three categories did Jesus fall into? Well, we know he was not Mongoloid because he was a Mediterranean Jew, and Mediterranean Jews were Caucasoid. Now, we need to be careful here. Yeah. Caucasoid doesn't mean you're a white man.
Yeah, it doesn't mean Caucasian.
No, it does actually. Caucasian comes from Caucasoid. A Caucasian does not necessarily have to be a white man, because Indians, for example, the inhabitants of the country of India are Caucasian. Mm-hmm. Pakistanis are Caucasian, and they have brown skin. Yeah. The reason why they're Caucasian is because they have thin lips, smaller nose, they have straight hair, but they're brown colored. Same applies to North Americans or English or Irish and so forth. And therefore, we know what the Jews looked like in the first century. We also know what they looked like hundreds of years before Christ. Because when the Egyptians depicted their prisoners, which included Semites, captives of Nubia or Kush, which is Africa, yes. The Nubians are shown with a flat nose, kinky hair, full lips, and very darker skin. When they depict the Semites, those who are people from the region of modern-day Israel, the Canaanites and so forth, they have straight hair, thin noses, thin lips, and their skin is brown. Look at the Egyptians. If you look at the pharaohs, for example, they were depicted with thin lips, small noses, and straight hair. Yeah. If you look at the mummy of Ramses II, which they've discovered, they have his mummy. If you look at his mummy, his hair is ginger color, and it's straight, and his nose is thin, and his lips are thin. These are not the features of a Negroid phenotype. And so we know what the ancient Semites looked like, because the Egyptians and the Babylonians depicted them for us. There's a famous stele, which is like looks like a pillar of a type, of an inscription. And in there you have a picture of King Jehu, the king of Judah, bowing before Shalmaneser III, the king of Assyria. And if you look at King Jehu, he has straight hair. The hair on his face is straight. And he has a hooked nose. And very typical of Semites. So archaeology has vindicated the claim that the Jews were Caucasoid. But it has nothing to do with skin color. So when the Nation of Islam claims, well, Jesus was black, what they're saying is he was Negroid in his features. And that's done deliberately to substantiate their claim that they as a movement represent the true people of God, who they claim are the Negroids. Now in Christianity, of course, the people of God are all those who come from every culture, every tribe, every tongue. And Jesus Christ has brought them to himself. He's broken down the walls of division. And so his church is comprised of all peoples from every nation under heaven. And so we need to understand here that a lot of bad stuff has been done in the history of Christianity. But I think we need to distinguish between what I call Christianity and churchianity. Yes. The church has done a lot of awful things in its history. But one thing we should always realize is you never you never take the position that because people have abused what Jesus has said, that represents what Jesus taught.
Yes,
we really need to be careful about that.
So we could verify Jesus didn't have blue eyes and blonde hair.
Most likely, Jesus of Nazareth was a Mediterranean Jew. Doubtful, very doubtful that he had light features. Very doubtful that he had blue eyes and freckles and so forth, the way he's depicted in some of our art today. As a matter of fact, a famous archaeologist who specializes in reconstruction of faces by using skulls took several skulls found in first century Jerusalem, in tombs found from the first century, and he reconstructed these faces. And what you find is that these Mediterranean Jews were Caucasoid, Caucasian, but they were olive-skinned. Remember, a lot of these folks worked under the sun, so they would have had a very olive-skinned complexion. They had facial hair, and they also had thin noses and thin lips, which is not the phenotype you find among the Negroids. And therefore, we have an idea of what he looked like, but very doubtful that he looked like a Western European. And so when we look at this data, what we find is that the very claims of the Nation of Islam and other black nationalist groups really cannot stand under that type of evidence.
So what does the Nation of Islam believe about the Bible then?
The Nation of Islam states in its official website that they believe the Bible to be the Word of God, but they say that it has also been tampered with. And they teach that a lot of falsehoods have been introduced into it. So basically what that means when you interpret that, when you flesh that out, what that means is the Bible is the Word of God insofar as it agrees with us.
Yes.
And where the Bible disagrees with us, it's been tampered with.
Yes.
So it's a very subjective approach to the Bible. It's not objective. And so the problem here, once again, is that they give lip service to the Bible, but in actual fact, they only use the Bible when it suits their advantages and their means.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Costa.
Pleasure.
Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you see, please press the subscribe button right below. And beside that is the bell icon. If you want to receive all of our notifications of everything that we do, press that icon as well. Thank you.